Chapter 8, Avalanche. The second squad leader had just rushed out 2 steps before he stopped, and an incredible scene appeared in front of us. The strange ladybug that exuded the breath of flames had changed from 1 doppelganger to 3, each of which was the same size as the original one. One of the 3 blue fireballs went straight to the second squad leader, and the other 2 got into the crowd like lightning, including the second squad leader, as well as the cook Lao Zhao and the correspondent Xiaolin. The 3 of them were hit by the fireballs, and their whole bodies burned, and they let out a terrible cry at the same time, writhing and struggling on the ground, trying to roll and extinguish the fire on their bodies. The terrible thing happened because the soldiers were so nervous when facing the fireball just now that they had all opened the safety bolts of their guns, and the magazines were full of bullets. Signal Soldier Kobayashi was only 16 years old at the time, and he lacked the courage and psychological endurance of an instructor and a second squad leader in the face of death, and the demonic fire burned his reason. Under the pain of being bitten by the flames, the semi-automatic rifle in his hand went off fire. Da-bang, da-bang, da-bang. And in the heavy gunshot, 3 comrades were hit by the stray bullets he shot and fell in a pool of blood. Things went in the worst direction, and the instructor would rather kill himself than let us shoot. But in the end someone still fired. Although it is terrible to be attacked by strange fireflies, it is not as terrifying as the avalanche caused by the sound of gunfire, and the occurrence of an avalanche means a catastrophe, and the members of the team, 1 counts as 1, and no one can survive. In the valley under the Great Glacier, shouting may only have a 30% chance of causing an avalanche, but the sound of gunfire, 200% of the time, will have the most terrible consequences. Seeing that the delirious Kobayashi rifle went off, stray bullets flew indiscriminately and killed 3 comrades by mistake. I didn't have time to think about it, gritted my teeth, picked up the rifle in my hand and shot 3 shots, knocking down Shaolin, the second squad leader, Lao Zhao, who was struggling in pain in the fire. The sound of rifle bullets echoing in the valley, and because of the narrow width of the valley, coupled with the mirror-like ice walls of the large glacier, it is simply a natural loudspeaker, and the sound of gunshots, shouts, and cries echoed wave after wave in the valley for a long time. I had not yet recovered from the pain of shooting my comrades with my own hands. My mind was full of their voices and smiles. My mind became blurred, and I suddenly felt a chill on my head, so I came back to my senses and touched it with my hand, and it turned out to be a snowflake falling on my forehead. It was a sunny day, the sun was shining brightly in the sky, and snow was not possible at this time. As soon as I touched the snowflakes, my heart sank, and the first thought that came to my mind was, finally, the avalanche. At this time, on the burning corpses of the 3 dead comrades, a blue fireball flew up each. At this moment there is no need to care about shooting. Gava's marksmanship is the most accurate among the members of the team. He picked up the rifle, did not aim, raised his hand as 3 shots. Each shot is in the center of the fireball. The ladybug inside is far less than the caliber of the bullet. The whole body of the insect is lost to the bullet, and the flame disappears. After this short and brutal conflict, there were 8 soldiers in our squad, plus a total of 10 instructors from the second squad, and now only I and the big man, 3 soldiers of Gava, and 2 intellectuals, Lu Gong and Luo Ning, are still alive. More and more snow was falling overhead. There was a rumbling sound in the sky. The whole valley was shaking. I looked up, and the snowboards on it rolled up into a storm, like a white tsunami, rolling overwhelmingly towards the valley where we were. The big man pulled me by the hand and shouted, "Old who? Mom, what are you looking at this time? Hurry up. We are in the middle of a valley, and the snow falling from the avalanche will definitely fill the entire valley, and there will be nowhere to run. But when it comes to life and death, humans will always instinctively have to make one last struggle." Luo Ning had already fainted in fright, and the big man pushed her to her shoulders, and Gawa and I dragged Lu Gong and ran to the opposite side of the big glacier, hoping to climb to the slightly higher slope opposite before the avalanche fell, to fight for this last ray of life. In the most desperate moments, we did not throw away the guns in our hands. Guns are a part of the life of a soldier, and throwing away a gun means throwing away the honor of a soldier. But he couldn't take care of anything else. He threw away all kinds of equipment and wanted to untie his backpack and throw it away, but in the hurry it was too late, and the 5 survivors pulled each other and ran wildly. The avalanche came so fast that it swept over the mountains and seas, and the valley was shaken by the energy of the avalanche and tumbling, and the mountains shook for a while. I've heard people talk about avalanches before, but I never imagined that there would be such a powerful silver wave between heaven and earth, and everyone's hearts were like ashes. And even if they had 2 more legs, they couldn't run away. However, the road was endless, and the violent tremors caused by the avalanche opened a large crack in the steep slope in front of us. The snowstorm swept in the air had arrived, and everyone didn't have time to think about it, and rushed into the crack in the rock, and the slope under the crack was very steep. But they didn't expect such a big drop below, so they fell down in a bunch, rolled a few times and fell to the bottom of a big hole. Then, a huge snowboard rolled down from behind, blocking the crack in the mountain, stirring up countless snow foam, and choking the 5 people to cough violently. It took a long time for the rumbling overhead to calm down, and when I heard the noise, I don't know how many thousands of tons of snow were covered on it. Unable to distinguish objects in the dark, everyone escaped death, and it took a long time before anyone spoke, with a mouth full of northeast accents. As soon as I heard it, I knew that it was a big man, and the big man asked, "Can you still pant for breath? Lao Hu, Jie Wazi, Lu Gong, Luo Gong, are you all there?" I felt like my whole body was about to fall apart, and I couldn't speak for a while in pain, and I only snorted twice, indicating that I was still alive. Gava agreed, took out a flashlight, and looked around. Luo Ning sat on the ground with dull eyes as if he was not injured. Lu Gong fell next to him, his eyes closed and unconscious. His left calf bone was broken, and half of Bai Xingxing's bone was exposed. Chapter 9 Story Demon Tower. The crevice we fell into was narrow and deep, and it was pitch black beyond the range of the flashlight, limited by visibility, and we didn't know what terrain was in the distance. The big man probed Lu Gong's snort with his hand, shook his hand and said, it's over, it's all gone." I crawled over and touched Lu Gong's carotid artery. It was indeed dead, and my heartbeat was gone, so I sighed and said to the big man, "Let's bury Lu Gong." I took out the sapper's shovel and tried to dig a pit, but Gava stopped me and pointed to the ground. "Bugs, fire." Gava's reminder, I just remembered that in the valley, because I wanted to dig a pit to bury the engineer who fell to death. I ended up digging up a devil-like ladybug, the team of 14 people, and 10 died in that thrilling few minutes. It seems that the land here can't be dug casually. God knows what the hell is down there. I have a gut feeling that that weird bug is not as simple as some mysterious creature, and after it burns 2 people, it splits from 1 to 3. Is it just a coincidence? I can't figure it out. But you can't just leave the corpse of your companion outside, and you have to take a compromise approach. I used a flashlight to illuminate it, and Galva and the big man picked up some rubble nearby and put it on Lu Gong's body, which was kind of a simple stone grave for him. In this process, Luo Ning always sat motionless on the ground, quietly staring at Lu Gong's stone tomb, and finally couldn't bear it anymore, and cried out, and the sorrow suppressed in his heart was released like a tidal wave. I wanted to persuade her, but I really didn't know what to say. I was touched by her crying, my nose was sour, my heart was like a knife. I remembered that last night, the team was still singing military songs in front of the campfire, and the loud singing seemed to be echoing in my ears. But today most of my comrades in arms are forever and forever sleeping under the big glacier in Kunlun Mountain. I helped Luo Ning to stand up and mourn together for Lu Gong and other comrades in arms. At that time, no matter what the occasion, Mao Xian had to be quoted, and I took the lead in reading. The sky is white, and the military situation in the snow is even more urgent. The other 3 people also echoed in unison. Head up and down the mountain, the wind spreads the red flag and crosses the mark. Only by sacrificing more ambitions dare to change the sun and the moon into a new sky. Then everyone raised their right fists and swore an oath. I wish the great leader Chairman Mao long and boundless life, and I wish Chairman Mao's close comrade in arms, Comrade Lin Biao, good health and eternal health. Comrades in arms, comrades, please rest assured, some people's deaths are lighter than feathers, some people's deaths are as heavy as Mount Tai, and the death for the interests of the people is heavier than Mount Tai, and you are sacrificing for the interests of the people. We must inherit the legacy of the revolutionary martyrs, follow in the footsteps of your blood-stained footsteps, carry out the great proletarian cultural revolution to the end, and the final victory will always belong to our workers, peasants, and soldiers. At that time, I was still a rookie, and I had never attended the memorial service of my comrades in arms, so I didn't know what to say, but I remember that others said this when they held meetings, and in that case, there was nothing suitable or inappropriate. After a long time, everyone calmed down from the pain and treated the wounds on their bodies, but fortunately, they were all minor injuries and did not affect their movements. After a few bites of compressed biscuits, I gathered together to discuss what to do next. It was impossible to get out of the valley that was crushed by snowboards, and I estimated that the entire valley might have been filled by avalanches, and now I had to find another exit. Galva patted the empty bullet bag on her body, indicating that there were not many bullets, because we had to carry a lot of equipment when we entered the mountain, so the ammunition was the minimum, and there were only 3 rifle magazines per person. After all, it was not a combat mission, and there were no bandits in this area, so it was a little careless to think about it in advance. Some of the ammunition was thrown away during the avalanche, and now there are only an average of about 20 rounds of ammunition left per person, and a total of 2 grenades. There should be no beast underground, and it's useless if there are too many bullets, just enough for self-defense. There is no dry food at all, everything that can be eaten has just been eaten, and we must find a way to find an exit within 2 days, otherwise we will starve to death in the ground. The fortunate thing in the misfortune is that Luo Ning actually has a compass on his body. The depth of the mountain gap was beyond imagination, and after walking south for a while, it came to an end, and the crack in the earth turned north, and it felt like you were walking under a great glacier. We walked forward in the dark for more than 10 hours, the lower the terrain became, and the underground space became larger and larger. Luo Ning measured it with a barometer, and the data of air pressure was converted into an altitude of only more than 400 meters, which was about the same as Sichuan, far lower than the Qinghai Tibet Plateau with an average altitude of more than 4,000 meters. At last the terrain finally calmed down, and the sound of rushing water was heard, and it seemed that there was a large underground river not far away. When I saw that there was no longer any downhill road, I searched around with my flashlight to see if there was any way up, and suddenly I noticed that the light from the flashlight produced many faint reflections on the rock wall, as if shining on the fragments of countless mirrors. Luo Ning exclaimed, "It's Micah!" The other 3 listened to what she said about Micah, and they didn't know what it was, but they were very frightened when they heard her tone, thinking that something was urgent, so they hurriedly blocked Luo Ning behind them, took off the 5 or 6 semi-automatic rifles from their backs as quickly as possible, pulled the bolt with a few clicks, and prepared to shoot. "Luo Ning," she said, "what do you do?" While holding a gun on guard, I asked Luo Ning, "What mother's male?" "Where is it?" Luo Ning said, "It's not an animal. I mean it's all crystals all around here. Mica and crystals usually grow in the same formation. There are crystals too." Although Luo Ning is mainly responsible for the mapping work, but often work with the geological exploration team, and also know a lot about geology and mineral knowledge, the crystals like glass flakes that appear around us are a kind of monoclinic crystals, which can only appear in the Archean double rock formation, and the underground reserves of Hebei are very large, but the mica here is extremely dark in color, and it is a large hexagonal column. The quality far exceeds that produced in Lingshou County, Hebei Province, and from the depth of mica color, our position is unimaginable. Luo Ning was attracted by the rare mica around. Looking at this piece and looking at that piece, I picked up a small piece and looked at it, but I couldn't see anything to be surprised about. At this time, I suddenly heard the big man shouting to Gava, "What are you doing in Lamso? Hurry up." I shone it with a flashlight, and saw that Gawa was kowtowing to the ground in the way of Tibetans, and her whole body was lying on the ground. What is this kid doing? To whom to kowtow? I looked in front of him again and gasped. In the ground actually stands a gold-shaped wooden tower made of thousands of giant trees. There are countless red flashes dotted on the tower body. Through those faint flashes of light, the base of the wooden tower is nearly 200 meters wide, rammed with mud and stone. The 1,000-year-old cypress wood is built into the tower body. It is divided into 9 layers. Each layer is full of dry bones wearing peculiar ancient costumes. Men, women and children have it, the wooden body of. Each big tree is engraved with the secret text of the Tibetan people. Is this a tomb? On such a huge scale, who built it underground? I went over and pulled up the Gawa, who was kowtowing on the ground. Although our party and our army respect the ethnic policy, and you are also a Tibetan, when you are wearing a military uniform, you are a member of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. The big man smiled next to him. Okay, Lao Hu, this little word is neat, and it has the potential to be an instructor. Luo Ning had been watching the mica, and when he heard the 3 of us arguing, he also came over to watch closer. I waved my hand at the big man and told him not to interrupt him, and continued to ask Gawa, "What kind of tower is this? Do you recognize the words written on it?" Gawa shook her head vigorously. I said, "This baby, I don't know what you're kowtowing, and seeing so many bones scares you, stupid?" Gawa's face was full of panic, and she said in Chinese, which was not very fluent, "Who this Jie Xiong, oh let you tell oh, let you pull oh Larados, 9-story demon tower." I didn't understand the first half of his sentence, but I could hear the last 4 words clearly. What 9-story demon building? What is it for? Isn't it just burying the dead? Before Gawa could speak, Luo Ning crept back from the side of the tower and made a silent gesture to us, pointing to the tower behind her and whispering to us, "Don't alarm them." I saw her solemn expression and knew that there might be trouble, but I didn't know what she was referring to, so I lowered my voice and asked, "What is alarmed? Dead people in the tower?" Luo Ning said extremely nervously, "No, it's the kind of ladybug with fire. They all sleep on the dead corpses. There are too many to count." After listening to Luo Ning's words, I realized that the dense red flashes on the wooden tower turned out to be from the transparent ladybug. Although I have some of the fearless spirit of a revolutionary soldier, I feel panic when I think of that strange ladybug. This creature beyond common sense is too difficult to deal with, and the horror of the tragic scene in the valley is probably too strong for me. I gestured, and the 4 of them quietly retreated back the way they came. Before he could take a few steps, Gawa suddenly stepped into the air and fell into a ditch. The ditch was hidden and parallel to the route we were traveling, so we didn't notice it when we came. Although the ditch was only more than a meter deep, Gawa was still snorted by the fall. I quickly jumped down to help him, and saw that Gawa was covering her feet, with a painful expression on her face. At this time, Luo Ning and the big man also went down to the ditch separately, and took a flashlight to shine it, and found that Jie Hua's cry was hit by a sharp white bone spur, and even the shoelaces and feet were strung with a transparent hole, and the blood flowed like an infusion. The ditch is full of layers of white bones of various animals, and the number is too large to estimate. It seems that this ditch should be a burial pit for cows, horses, sheep, dogs, and other animals. In order not to alarm the ladybugs in the nearby wooden tower, the big man covered Gawa's mouth with his hand to prevent him from screaming. I pulled out the white bone inserted in his foot. Luo Ning sprinkled his wound with Yunnan Bai Yao and his portable first aid kit, and took out a white bandage to help him bandage it to stop the bleeding. My hands were stained with the blood on Gawa's legs, and I wiped a few handfuls on my military uniform, and a thought suddenly flashed through my mind. This burial pit for cattle and horses was dug so strangely, not in a square circle, but in the shape of a long ditch, which led to the wooden tower where the corpses were placed. This shape happened to be similar to the layout called deterrence, mentioned in the Feng Shui secret art. If it was really exactly the same, then there should be a burial ditch of the same size in the parallel position. The 2 burial ditches are parallel to each other and clamp the tomb of the wooden tower structure, forming the trend of 2 dragons absorbing pearls. And it is inferred that the ditch next to it should be some utensils used by the owner of the tomb during his lifetime. It's just that it is not known whether these 2 burial ditches are artificial, or naturally formed, and it seems that the latter is more likely. Judging from the sound of the river torrent, there is an underground river in the northwest, that is, behind the 9-story demon tower, because dragons can't do without water. If that's what I expected, then the map of the underworld is already in my head, and I just need to find another burial ditch to confirm my inference. The big man pushed my shoulder. Old Hu, what's going on? I just thought about it, and I came back to my senses after being pushed by him, and I asked Luo Ning. Luo Gong, can you estimate our current position? Probably we're on the map. Luo Ning used the compass to calculate with reference to the map, and said after a moment of silence, We have been walking north for more than 10 hours underground, and according to our speed, the big glacier that has already passed the head should be about to leave Kunlun Mountain. I told me what I had just thought. If we go back at this time, we can only go back to the avalanche-covered crevice, and if my estimate is correct, we should be able to walk along the underground river, and there should be a way out. But to do so would be to risk passing under the 9-story demon tower, which is a plan to survive in death. The four of them put it together, and felt that it was worth the risk, although it was fraught with danger, but I decided to find another burial ditch next to it first. Before the operation, I asked Gava, what exactly is the 9-story demon tower? Gava spoke Chinese very hard. I finally understood part of it after speaking for a long time. In his hometown of Xiaowei, there is also a 9-story demon building exactly the same ruins. According to legend, this 9-story demon building is the funeral form of the ancient demon kingdom kings and a family of tombs. When the demon kingdom perished, the tomb has been destroyed by the hero King Gizer. Only a pile of rotten wood shelves are left in the Tibetan plateau, and the narrative poems passed down from the herdsmen's mouths are sung for generations to praise King Gizer like the sun as unparalleled martial arts. When Tibetan herdsmen pass by these relics, they bow and sing epics. This is not to fear the tomb of the demon king, but to express respect for King Gizer. Gava also said something religious, but I couldn't understand it, and I don't know if the ghostly insects were the resting spirits of the dead in the tomb. I left Luo Ning and the other 3 people in the same place, crawling forward, and in the place separated from the burial ditch of cattle and horses more than 100 meters. Sure enough, there was another burial ditch, which was full of ancient leather boots, ancient Tibetan wood chips, ancient Mongolian wooden tablets, painted wood chips and gold ornaments, wooden plates, wooden wings, wooden birds and beasts, bronze ware, grain and a large number of silk and other burial items. It seems that my inference is correct. The underground river behind the 9-story demon tower must be connected to the outside world. So I sneaked back to the animal burial ditch to beckon the other 3 to act. I opened the way first, and the big man with the gun behind me, followed by Gawa, who had a thorn in his foot, and Luo Ning helped him walk behind. The scale of the 9-story demon tower was very large, and the underground cavern was originally extremely vast, but the tower and the large mica on both sides almost blocked the road to the north, and only a very narrow place on both sides was barely passable. We passed under the wooden tower with trepidation, and when we saw the ladybugs in the tower that flickered with the breath of fire, we felt that our hearts were about to jump out of our throats, and in the distance of 200 meters under the tower, the distance of each step seemed so far away. Finally rubbed through the 9-story demon building, walked forward less than 200 steps, suddenly the feet were soft, as if stepping on some huge animal. I used a flashlight to shine. Under my feet is a huge reptile that I have never seen. It spits out a long tongue. The color of the skin is very close to the color of the ground. It looks a bit like a monitor lizard, and the appearance is very similar to a crocodile. But there is no so rough epidermis, and the front kiss is not as sharp as a lizard. It looks relatively round. The tongue is like a snake, red and long, the front is forked, and the skin of the whole body is black. It is covered with large white round scabs, and in terms of appearance alone, it can basically be described as a super large frog with a long tail. I've never been afraid of anything in my life, but I'm more afraid of this disgusting thing, so scared that I shrank behind the big man, and the big man also saw this strange animal, and he probably felt the same as me, and was also startled. Maybe the only partner that the soldier could rely on was the rifle, and he instinctively raised the gun to shoot, snapped a point shot, and the reptile writhed a few times, and died. At this time, Luoning, who was walking at the end, walked over, looked at the dead bodies of animals on the ground, and said to us with a sigh, "This is a salamander that lives underground, eating insects and mayflies for a living, and does not hurt people. I don't feel sorry for killing an animal. What I'm worried about is that the big man recklessly shoots. Will it wake up the insects in the tower? Damn it, if people are unlucky, they will stuff their teeth when they drink cold water, and the ladybugs in the 9-story demon tower are obviously alarmed by the gunshots, and countless blue fireballs like bright lights light up. The entire underground space was reflected in the blue of the firelight, and the wooden tower was also ignited, and the fire grew bigger and bigger. Hundreds of fireballs rushed towards us, such a big fire, but we didn't feel a trace of heat, but felt the cold, and the teeth trembled. Seeing that this was not good, the big man took out the 2 grenades inserted in his arm belt, and was about to pull the string and throw them to explode those fireballs. I quickly pressed his hand. "Throw one, leave us a glorious bullet. I don't want that ghost fire to burn to death."